talk about over the past 7 days in the sport. Plenty has gone on, especially across the top 25. Plenty of big-time matchups. We will talk about a few of those in particular, the ones that have gone down in the SEC. We had Florida face Kentucky over the weekend, and then Florida face Tennessee during the midweek slate of games. We also got Kentucky in a matchup against Georgia, which went not how many would have predicted. Oklahoma faced Alabama, and then Texas A&M, a tough start to the conference schedule for them, and then Alabama, Auburn also getting underway. We'll go through some of those top teams in the SEC in the second segment, and then in the third segment, we will talk through the games of the week as we do every week, getting you ready for the next week of college basketball. But here in the first segment, there's only one topic that we can touch on. I know usually I go in order there, but this one was so big, decided to kind of just dive straight into it. Mick Cronin at UCLA had some pretty interesting comments after his team's loss against Michigan in a ranked, I want to emphasize that, this was a ranked matchup. UCLA is in the top 25. He was not happy with their performance, seems to not be very happy with what's going on behind the scenes there at UCLA as well. There seems to be some frustration starting to build from him, from the fan base, perhaps within that program, and just a lot to unpack. So let's go ahead and get into it right off the top here. Mick Cronin called his team soft. And it wasn't just calling his team soft. I think it's important to get the full picture of what all he said, because he didn't just say one time that his team was soft. It was a repeated thing, a theme throughout his press conference. He wanted to deliver the message that no one around UCLA basketball was working hard enough. He felt like he cared more about practice than any of the players. Seemed to indicate that maybe the assistant coaches are even included in the things he was saying to some degree, but made it a point that they are delusional. That's a direct quote. He said his players are delusional about how good they are. They think they don't have to train to be able to go out and win in the Big Ten. And so a couple of the quotes here that I'll just read through. He said, "We're soft. We're too soft to play hard enough. Even in the crucial moments, you can't get a rebound. You don't tell me you want to win. Just don't tell me you want to win. I mean, we're soft. To be fair, they have a unique skill set, but we're soft." All right, so he really hammers home the point there to get things started. But he continues. He goes on. This was, like I said, keeps coming back up as he keeps talking. He said he's searching for some guys that'll play hard enough to win a Big Ten game. It's really hard to coach people that are delusional. The hungry dog gets the bone. We've got guys that think they're way better than they are. They're nice kids. They're completely delusional about who they are. So, scathing review of his team there. And then he keeps going. I have to run onto the court to get guys to play hard. It's crazy. And it's every day. I'm tired of it. It's every day. I have the most energy of anybody at practice every day. I'm upset with everybody in that locker room, my assistant coaches, and my players. So, Mick Cronin is not happy at UCLA. And so we need to break this down into, I think, probably at least 2, maybe 3 different conversations. The first one is what's going on with this year's roster, the makeup of it, the combination of talent, and what has gone wrong from the enrollment of these players to now, that he feels like they're soft. They're not giving him what he wants. The assistant coaches as well. Like, he's saying this is a program-wide thing here. What has led him down this path? The second one is, how has his tenure at UCLA kind of led to this because last year was a down year. It was a weird year for UCLA. And so there's a lot to unpack from a magical run after a so year to being one of the best teams in college basketball, slowly kind of falling off. Last year having nothing, this year coming back with a talented roster, but apparently not delivering in the way he wants. So it's been quite a roller coaster at UCLA since Mick Cronin got there. And I think that the third thing is his fit at UCLA because it was weird from day one. When he made the move from Cincinnati to UCLA, I think, it caught some people by surprise. It did not seem like the fit. He's a hard-nosed, Midwestern kind of coach, and he goes out to Los Angeles, where, and I'm not the first person to bring this up, but if you want hard-nosed, gritty basketball players, Los Angeles is not the most conducive place for that. There's a lot of distractions, a lot of different areas you can focus your attention. So let's start with point number one. This year's roster. They bring in quite a few transfers from several different places. You've got some guys who are transferring up from lesser programs, some transferring laterally. You've got a couple of returning players as well. And then some freshman talent that has been thrown into the mix. Not making a huge impact, but it's there. I think one of the things that coaches are going to have to do a little bit better job of, and this is across the board, this is not a jab just at Mick Cronin, but you start to hear complaining or you see a team fall apart and it's kind of chalked up to, well, we didn't get the right culture in the portal. These players didn't mesh well. And I get that the portal is sometimes a full-on race to the finish line, 100-meter dash, like whoever can get there, whoever can call him first or get him on campus first, that's the goal. Like, we just got to go. He's got talent, get him. But that approach is not 100% going to work because there's a lot of talented guys who are not at their previous program for more than just that they thought they could do more somewhere else. Particularly these guys making lateral moves. I think it's one of the least vetted areas that these coaches look at is if I'm getting a player, it doesn't have to be a rival, but it could be a rival. If I'm getting a player from a rival school, why was that rival school allowing him to walk out the door? Because you can make him a bigger offer. If it's money and you're at this level of the sport that UCLA is, you can make an offer. Now, maybe it's that, his friends they're no longer on the team, so he's going to try something new. Coaching changes are a big one. Sometimes it's just that your role wasn't as big as you thought. But like I said, we're talking about the talented ones that are kind of making a lateral transition here. So I think that the vetting process needs to be improved. Call more people. And not just the kids' inner circle. Like, call people who have played with, against, coached against. You got to find out more about these people before you invest. And that's the big difference, I think, in this NIL era that we're not getting as much of right now, but hopefully over time we will see adjust, is that these are investments. Okay, you're not just bringing in a kid and he's just taking up a roster spot. Like, there's a real, tangible investment by, a lot of times, your fan base. Yes, a small percentage of your fan base is doing most of the lifting with the boosters and the collectives now, the way they're set up, but you're still talking about a real investment here. So when that kid disrupts the culture of the program or doesn't live up to the standards of those fans for whatever reason, on the court, off the court, body language, I mean, you see, especially with social media now, you see kids' body language getting picked apart. I mean, 19-year-old kids, they're getting picked apart for their body language on the bench, whether they're up 20 or down 20. Oh, this guy didn't high five the walk on when he checked into the game. What does that mean? Who knows? Maybe he just didn't see him. Maybe there's some deep rooted hatred of his teammates. Who knows? But it's going to get picked apart. And now you have to answer to the fans in a way that you never had to before because they're invested in this. They've put money into this. So it holds these coaches, I think, even more liable to bring in the right mixture of players. Now, there has not been a whole lot of talk about this UCLA team just having like bad guys on it. So whether it's the assistant coaches making the wrong hires there, because that's also an option. Like if you don't have the right assistant coaches in a basketball program, I'm telling you, it can drag you down significantly. Because if they're not holding the players accountable, they're kind of the go-between. A lot of times these players have great relationships with the assistant coach. And if that assistant coach is kind of letting the players slide on whether it's academics or conditioning work or weight room stuff or just being late to a meeting, if they're letting that stuff slide, it can quickly erode into the rest of the team, into more issues, bigger issues, and quickly become a team-wide issue of we don't work hard. So I can't tell you what behind the scenes is going on at UCLA, but those are a few of the things that I can see because we know it's not Mick Cronin. Like he said, he's bringing energy every day. And maybe it's just that he brings the most energy everywhere he is every day. That's also a possibility. But clearly, he wants people at least closer to his level on a daily basis there at UCLA. So you've got just the location. You've got the vetting process of transfers and freshmen. You've got assistant coaches. You've got, you know, the role of NIL and the fan base and all that. Like there's so much that's going into this. I'm telling you, it's not one simple thing. You're not going to be able to pick apart the body language and find one kid that's the problem. This is something that Mick Cronin's going to have to get sorted out and do so in a hurry because fans are going to start getting onto him now. Like this is kind of the tipping point where you say these kinds of things, it better flip and it better flip in a hurry or the fans are going to start to turn. So we move on to point number 2 here, and Mick Cronin's kind of tenure at UCLA. It's been a roller coaster, truly. I mean, he comes in and he's got a good roster, some talent on it, but they struggle throughout the season. They end up in the NCAA tournament. They get hot at the right time going into March, roll through things, end up making a deep NCAA tournament run. Now everyone's excited. It's like, well, the fit might not have worked, but we'll talk about that later. But like the fit might not have looked good on paper, but hey, look, he's got them playing. They come in the next year with one of the most talented rosters. They have a good season. Again, you're thinking, all right, this is going the right way. Then it tails a little bit, and you see a couple of struggles, and it's just up and down, and it kind of culminates last year with this season that was just a disaster. They don't bring in transfers. They don't retain enough of the talent on the roster. And you've got Mick Cronin screaming from the mountaintops pretty much all season about how like he was not allowed to build a roster. He didn't have the NIL resources he needed. He didn't have the ability to go get players who can win basketball games at the level they were playing. And this year, those calls worked. He got the investment. I mean, go look at the players they were able to bring in from the transfer portal, bring in some some overseas help, which came the year before because he couldn't get the NIL. Able to develop some players who were on the roster, and you think, all right, here we go again. We're back on track at UCLA. But now he's bringing up these questions of toughness. Now, they're not a bad team. I still think they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. I think that they're going to have some success throughout the season. It really comes down to whether his relationship with fans can remain tenable and that he can prove himself. He asked for NIL. He got NIL. They got behind him. Now they expect results. Well, now he's pointing to this. And so if he can get this sorted out, get the toughness from this team, make sure that at the start of next year there's a toughness to his squad by vetting the people who come in. Then, if you're the fan base, you say, all right, look, he's delivered. He asked for something. He went out and made sure it happened. But if he does not get it, if things turn the other way, if things go bad through the end of this year, into next year, you have similar issues or something else goes wrong, that's when people start rolling their eyes and saying, all right, there's an excuse every year. That's when they start to get frustrated. They start to wonder why they have Mick Cronin when they can probably go get a pretty good coach. So it brings us to point number 3, and this weird fit that's always been there. Mick Cronin is a Midwestern, blue-collar, tough-nosed guy. He wants to grind you down. He's coaching in Los Angeles, where there's a lot to do. And so first, just to draw in fans, you kind of have to play an exciting brand in any sport. And so that's kind of a strange fit between the two of them. And it's not the only way to win. His brand of basketball is very, very good. So don't think I'm saying that Mick Cronin can't coach the right brand of basketball or something. It's just a strange fit in the location that he is. So for him, for the school, strange fit, but success makes everything a good fit. Now that the success is not there, you're starting to see that friction that was always kind of inevitable. And you're seeing people point to it quite a bit. And I'm not sure exactly how much it is to blame, but the LA culture is a difficult one for college kids in particular to separate themselves from, to then be the type of basketball player that Mick Cronin wants. So I'm curious how much that plays a role in the lack of toughness. Now, to the credit of a lot of people who have been in that program, and to kind of counter that idea that's been floated out there, this has not been something that Mick Cronin has screamed about every year that he's been the coach. He has been able to find some tough, hard-nosed guys in that LA area. I mean, look at Jaime Jaquez now in the NBA, having some success. So I'm not quite sure where we go from here, but it's something that we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on over the course of the next few months and the next year, really, as we look at Mick Cronin and UCLA, the relationship between him, the fan base, the players, the coaching staff, the admin, just all around what's going on there. And all of this set on the backdrop of obviously the tragic events taking place in Los Angeles right now. So thoughts and prayers with everyone impacted by that. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk about the SEC, what all has been going on, plenty of ranked matchups over the past week, starting to sort things out on where these teams stand right here on 3 True Values. Welcome back into 3 True Values as we keep things rolling today. Wanted to touch on the SEC because we've seen a lot of really good games, some not so good games, but some really good teams. We've seen it all here through the first few days of conference play in what we've said is the best conference in college basketball right now. It all starts on Saturday. The big matchup was Florida at Kentucky. Kentucky gets out of there with the win. They played a really, really good game. Then we move forward to Tuesday's slate of games where Kentucky was going to face Georgia. who Georgia, a bubble team, but having some really good success. Definitely in the NCAA tournament picture, has some talent on that roster. They face Kentucky and they walk out of there with a win. So Georgia off to a great start in SEC play. Florida turns around on Tuesday and they respond as well. More than just a response. They face Tennessee now at home and win by 30 points, but the 30-point win does not do it any amount of justice. They dominated Tennessee from the opening whistle to the buzzer in a fashion that I am not sure I have ever seen. Not just for a number one team. Like, there's been attention paid on this is the worst loss by a AP number one, and what Florida was able to do in historical context, two SEC teams between whatever it is. It was more than like this looked how the last couple of years has looked when UConn plays a 16 seed. I mean, you didn't think there was a point in the first half where I started to question if Tennessee was going to get to 10 points in the first half. I really wasn't sure when they were actually going to score. Florida was that dominant. And sure, part of it is just full on outlier. Like at one point before garbage time, when they had the backups in there and they're just getting up shots, and nobody's really playing tough defense. They're kind of just getting they're getting cardio in and finishing the basketball game. That's what it is. But before that, in those last few minutes, there was a point where Tennessee was shooting 4% from three and 15% from the field. I believe in the second half, this is and not like the start of the second half. This is like a few minutes into the second half, multiple minutes into the second half here. Tennessee had 6 made field goals. And I'm looking up and I'm thinking, what is even happening? It truly was one of the most dominant performances I have ever seen. Florida taking down Florida taking down Tennessee. And then Georgia takes down Kentucky, who just beat Florida. So it's going to be an absolute gauntlet in this conference. You want more proof of that? Well, go look at Auburn, who promises to rise to number one in the AP poll after Tennessee's loss because they keep just beating teams down as well. The Tigers, who have had the best resume in college basketball, now are tied for the best record, so they can now slot into that number one overall spot again. They've already been number one in bracketology. Like, there's no metric that you're going to see from Auburn where they're not just dominating. That includes the Player of the Year rankings, where Janai Broome is kind of running away with it at this point. So you've got Auburn, best team in the country. You've got Florida, who just beat down one of the best teams and the number one team in the country. Kentucky, who already proved they can beat that Florida team. And then how about Alabama, who is starting to get healthy, starting to get their rotation fully together, and they have absolutely dominated in their first 2 games. They blow out Oklahoma, again, a ranked opponent, borderline top 10 team in the country, absolutely blew them out of the water. And then go and just handle South Carolina. And this Alabama team looks like the Alabama team that we were prepared for coming into the season. And they had some injuries to overcome. They had to figure out the rotation. We knew that it would take a minute to get things sorted out. They survived that non-conference schedule that was so tough. Now they're in conference play, and they look to be clicking on all cylinders. You talk about that Oklahoma team. Well, they're sort of reeling at this point, and reeling a relative term, like they're still safe. They're in the NCAA tournament picture. They're fine. But they had to face Texas A&M, who is also ranked and in this conversation of elite teams on a huge win streak right now. And Texas A&M comes back from an 18-point deficit to knock them off. So Texas A&M gets things started with wins over Texas and Oklahoma. There are so many elite teams in the SEC that I'm really not sure how this is going to shake out. I mean, you look at the top of the conference and teams that can win the regular season SEC title: Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas A&M, and I'm gonna throw this one in because every time I watch them, they take care of business, and I have been very impressed. They don't have the star power that these other teams do. They don't have that, exciting, just up and down brand that some of these other ones do. But Mississippi State wins basketball games. They have been incredible to this point. So I'm not ruling them out either in that conversation. This is the deepest conference at the top, it's the deepest conference at the bottom. The SEC is the best conference in college basketball, no question about it right now. When we come back on the other side, we'll get you the games of the week, get you ready for the next 7 days of college basketball before we talk again here on Three True Values. Welcome back as we get you out of here today on Three True Values with your games of the week. We start, as always, on Thursday night where Oregon and Ohio State facing off. We talked about on the Mailbag episode earlier this week about Jake Diebler, what he is doing at Ohio State. This is a really big opportunity for his team against Oregon, who is ranked really good under Dana Altman, hoping that they're able to keep some health throughout this season. That's been the big Achilles heel for the Ducks over the past few seasons. Then on Friday, we got more Big Ten basketball. UCLA against Maryland. We talked in this episode about Mick Cronin, everything he had to say. Can he back it up? Can his team come out and show some toughness? They're playing against Maryland, who's got Julian Reese and Derek Queen in that front court, one of the best in the country, that duo down low. Then we move to the weekend on Saturday, Alabama, Texas A&M. This is a something's got to give game. Texas A&M on that big win streak. Alabama looks red hot as well. I think this is as good as you're going to get in college basketball. These two teams going head to head against each other. Neither team is going to back down either throughout the course of that matchup. Then on Sunday, we go back to the Big Ten, going back to the well here with Nebraska against Purdue. Nebraska on the bubble. Fred Hoiberg's got that team rolling. They've been really good, kind of under the radar this year. A big opportunity for them against Purdue to pick up not just a win against a ranked team, but also to boost those computer numbers, get them up above the bubble if they can string a couple of these together with that starting things off against Purdue. Then on Monday, there's a couple of games here and there, but they're kind of from teams that are off the bubble, nobody that we're really that concerned about, teams that we've already watched earlier this week. It's just, man. So we're going to go McNeese, Houston Christian. Now, Houston Christian, not very good, but McNeese, as we know, out of the Southland Conference, projected to be the team that you see play in March Madness. Will Wade, the head coach, is going to be one of the top candidates for every job that opens. So let's get a look at what his offense looks like down there at McNeese. On Tuesday, we've got Auburn, Mississippi State. I just got done raving about both of these teams. Auburn, the best team in the country right now. Mississippi State, the most underrated team in the country. They can beat anyone, I think, in college basketball. So we'll see how those two teams match up. Can the Bulldogs give them a run for their money there in that conference showdown? And on Wednesday, we wrap things up with a huge Big 12 matchup. Iowa State taking on Kansas. This is the top of the conference facing off against each other. Not going to want to miss that one. Otzelberger has this Iowa State team just absolutely rolling these past couple of years. And Kansas, we know how talented Kansas is. If they can put it all together on a nightly basis, they will move back up among the best in the country. So those are the games of the week that you're going to want to check out, and then come back here next Thursday for more Three True Values. We'll talk about everything that's happened, all the stories across college basketball, and get you ready for the week after. So thanks again for tuning in right here